7, the Republican presidential campaign makes a stop in Indiana. We have live coverage of Donald Trump's rally at the fairgrounds and the protest outside.
If I were in office right now, Carrier would not be leaving Indiana.
Bold claims from the Republican who wants to be president. Donald Trump using Carrier's move to Mexico in his efforts to gain Hoosier support during Indiana's primary on May 3rd. RTV6's Jason Fechner was inside that rally. He heads our live team coverage from the State Fairgrounds. Jason?
Well, good evening, Erica. Good evening, everyone. And what a difference about 14 hours make here at the Indiana State Fairgrounds. It was around 5 this morning that the first Trump supporters showed up here, parking in the parking lot. A big line of people then wound their way from the pavilion, and the doors open around noon for Donald Trump's comments, scheduled around 3 o'clock. He actually took the stage at around 3:30. His supporters here today, about 3,000, possibly 3,500 or so, give or take, very fired up. They heard a lot of the common themes they hear from Donald Trump on the road right now. He's going to beat ISIS if elected. He's going to build that wall if elected, and he's going to build up the U.S. military as well. Here, though, now 13 days to the Indiana primary set for May 3rd. He had a big message for all Hoosiers: get out and vote.
You're going to remember this beautiful afternoon in Indiana, and you're going to say you had a good time, but more importantly, in a couple of weeks, when it comes time for Indiana to vote, you're going to go out and vote. And you're going to look back at that vote, and you're going to say that that was the single greatest and most important vote that you've ever cast. Because when you cast that vote, our country is going to start winning again.
Indiana, of course, could be crucial to his presidential aspirations going forward. I'll explain why here in just about a minute or so. Now, inside the venue, it was relatively peaceful. There were a couple of smaller protests that broke out throughout the day, but all in all, supporters very fired up to see the Republican frontrunner here in Indiana for the first time ahead of the primary. He also delivered a lot of local messages to Hoosiers. He says the Colts are going to have a great season, and he had some very strong words for Carrier. Carrier, of course, set to move 1,400 jobs out of Indiana to Mexico. All in all, his supporters told RTV6 they were excited by what they heard today.
I think he's good for the country. And when I was in the Marines after Pearl Harbor, I felt like that nothing really mattered of what I did for my country, which I love my country, and that's why I did it. I don't want any pats on the back. We were patriotic. And when this man came along, I felt like that he would do something good for the country.
I also think that being so vocal about his opinions and saying what he actually thinks, regardless of being politically correct or what people may think of him, I think that's really important too.
Aren't very tough around here.
Trump's message, of course, not met entirely with praise. He said he is used to that, though he was disappointed with the Indiana protesters because he would tell them to get out, and they would simply get out. Security escorted about a dozen people out of the rally earlier this afternoon. Outside, though, a much different story. Police held a lot of the protesters at bay out here, and they came face to face with those Trump supporters, especially as they left the building. Our team coverage continues now with RTV6's Chris Profit.
A group of protesters outside of Donald Trump's appearance here at the Indiana State Fairgrounds, but unlike other venues where the Republican presidential candidate has spoken, this one is violence-free. A small group formed 2 hours before Trump was to speak, taking an equal number of shots at Indiana's governor and Trump.
I mean, I'm just here because I'm very left-wing and I want to get the full circle for everything. So I'm here to learn what I can, talk to people. Why is Trump so appealing? Tell me. Because the only people I've met that actually believe that were behind a keyboard. So
by the time Trump took the stage, a large group of protesters formed along with dozens of state police troopers, forming a line between supporters and protesters.
I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a supporter, but I would like to be an informed citizen, you know, about real policies, not rhetoric.
By the time Trump finished speaking, skirmishes started between both groups. 2 people were arrested, and state police quickly dispersed people, averting the violence that's marred some of Trump's campaign stops. Chris Profit, RTV6.
Thank you, Chris. And on the outside of both of those groups, you just had a lot of people here at the fairgrounds today who wanted to see what all the fuss was about, the kind of state of the fringes of the parking lot, and just kind of watch the madness as it unfolded here. Now, Donald Trump's first stop, of course, once he got to Indiana and his jet landed at the airport, was to go over and meet with Governor Mike Pence. Their hour-long discussion earlier today held at the governor's mansion on the city's north side. Their meeting comes just 13 days before Indiana's critical primary on May 3rd. It also comes before the visit of another GOP hopeful, Ted Cruz, and the third in that list right now, John Kasich. Before Trump held his rally here today, he wanted to make sure to express kind words to both the governor, who has yet to endorse anyone in the running, and the entire state of Indiana.
What do you think about Indiana, sir?
We love Indiana.
How much do you love it? Will you come back for the 500, sir?
He's doing a great job.
Thank you, Mr. Trump.
Our own Rafael Sanchez using his New York voice there to get Donald Trump's attention earlier today. The rally, of course, got everyone's attention all across the state, including some Democrats. We spoke with Congressman Andre Carson.
I don't want to see another article suggesting that Trump is engaging in a hostile takeover of his party. He's not. He is a product of years and years of racial appeals by, generations of Republicans. And Trump is effectively or basically the GOP without the wrapping paper.
Congressman Andre Carson speaking to RTV6 earlier today. We want to get a rundown on the numbers now. Why is Indiana so critical to Donald Trump's chances going forward? Here's an updated delegate count after his big win in New York. He's now sitting at 845 delegates to Ted Cruz's 559. He's here tomorrow. John Kasich back at 147. That magic number, 1,237. And here's why it's so important for Donald Trump to win Indiana. If all polls hold right now, two states are considered toss-ups for the Republicans, Indiana and California. We've got 57 delegates in play, of course, here in Indiana. 172 are in play in California. He would need to lock up the nomination before the likelihood of a contested convention, 175. So he needs Indiana, or he would need to sweep California. That's why Indiana is so important right now. That's why he was here today, 13 hours ahead of the primary, and he's already flown to Maryland to continue to campaign up the East Coast. Our coverage continues now through the RTV6 app, but Erica, for now, we'll send it back to you in the studio.